The Galactic Council chamber fell silent as the warning klaxons screamed across Nexus Prime. Ambassador Zethkri's four eyes widened in disbelief as the holographic display materialized before the assembled delegates from 12 star systems. "This cannot be accurate," whispered Chancellor Vextar, her crystalline form shimmering with nervous energy. "The readings show impossible velocity signatures." Admiral Korath slammed his massive fist against the tactical console, his scarred hide gleaming under the chamber's ambient lighting. "The sensors don't lie, Chancellor. Something just dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of our system, something big." The hologram rotated slowly, revealing a vessel unlike anything in the galactic database. Where most ships curved gracefully through space with elegant biomechanical designs, this thing looked like it had been forged in the heart of a dying star. Angular, brutal, uncompromising. "Computer, analyze vessel configuration," Zethkri commanded, his voice barely steady. Analysis complete, the AI responded in its calm, synthetic tone. "Unknown vessel measures approximately 2 kilometers in length. Hull composition includes materials not found in galactic registry. Energy signatures suggest primitive fusion-based propulsion systems." A collective gasp echoed through the chamber. Primitive? Yet somehow this ancient-looking ship had achieved speeds that should have torn it apart at the molecular level. "Sir?" Communications Officer Yilhara interrupted, her tentacles trembling as she worked the console. "We're receiving a transmission. Audio only. The language, it's not in our database." "Put it through," Admiral Korath growled. Static filled the chamber, followed by a voice that seemed to carry the weight of distant worlds. "This is Captain Sarah Chen of the United Earth Defense Force vessel Defiance. We've traveled far to reach you. Our home is gone. Our people scattered. But we're not here to beg for sanctuary." The transmission crackled with interference, then cleared. "We're here to fight." The chamber erupted in chaos. Delegates shouted over each other while security personnel moved to defensive positions. But Admiral Korath raised a hand for silence, his battle-scarred face grim with recognition. "Chancellor," he said quietly, 3 cycles ago, we received fragmentary reports from the Outer Rim. An entire star system simply vanished. No debris, no survivors. Nothing but empty space where 12 billion souls once lived." The weight of his words settled over the assembly like a shroud. "What if," Korath continued, his voice dropping to barely above a whisper, "what if these humans are the only ones who escaped?" Chapter 2. First Contact. The docking bay of Nexus Prime had never housed anything like the human shuttle that now rested on its pristine deck. Where Galactic Council ships possessed smooth, organic curves that seemed to flow like liquid metal, the human craft looked like it had been hammered together from salvaged parts and stubborn determination. Captain Sarah Chen stepped onto the dock, her worn military uniform a stark contrast to the elaborate robes and biosuits of the alien delegation. Behind her walked 3 other humans, each carrying themselves with the particular weariness of soldiers who had seen too much. Ambassador Zethkri approached cautiously, his translator unit humming as it processed the human language in real time. "Captain Chen, I am Ambassador Zethkri of the Galactic Council. We welcome you, though we confess your arrival has raised many questions." Sarah's eyes swept across the assembled aliens with practiced assessment. After 47 years of military service, she had learned to read threats and allies quickly. These beings radiated nervousness but not hostility. "Ambassador," she replied, extending her hand in the universal human gesture of greeting. "I appreciate the welcome, though I suspect you'll have more questions once you hear what we have to say." Zethkri tentatively took her hand, surprised by the firm grip and the calluses that spoke of manual labor despite her officer's rank. "This is my tactical officer, Commander James Rodriguez," Sarah continued, indicating a tall man with prematurely gray hair and eyes that seemed to calculate angles and distances constantly. "My engineer, Lieutenant Colonel Wei Liu, and my xenobiologist, Dr. Amara Okafor." Each human nodded in turn, their faces reflecting a mixture of hope and haunted determination. Chancellor Vexitar stepped forward, her crystalline form refracting the dock's lights into rainbow patterns. "Captain, your message mentioned that your home is gone. We've detected massive energy distortions in several outer systems. Are these events connected?" Sarah exchanged glances with her team before responding. "Chancellor, 3 months ago, Earth had a population of 9 billion humans. Today there are fewer than 50,000 of us left, scattered across 7 ships. The number hit the alien delegation like a physical blow. Several gasped, while others stepped back in shock. The Devourers came without warning," Sarah continued, her voice steady despite the pain in her eyes. "They consumed our sun first, draining its energy to power their fleet. Then they methodically stripped every planet, every moon, every asteroid in our system. Not for resources, they left the minerals behind, they wanted something else." "What?" whispered Dr. Felnari, the Council's chief scientist, her insectoid features clicking with nervous energy. "Life energy," Dr. Okafor answered, her voice carrying the weight of scientific horror. "They harvested every living thing, every plant, every animal, every microorganism. They fed on the life force itself." Admiral Korath leaned forward, his warrior instincts fully engaged. "How did you escape?" Commander Rodriguez spoke for the first time, his voice clipped and professional. "We were conducting deep space military exercises when the attack began. By the time we received the distress signals, Earth was already dark. We managed to evacuate some civilian vessels, but—" He paused, swallowing hard. "Most of humanity died watching their sun go out." The docking bay fell silent except for the hum of environmental systems. The alien delegates processed this information with growing horror, each imagining their own world suffering the same fate. "Captain," Chancellor Vextar said slowly, "if these Devourers are as powerful as you describe, why come to us? Why not flee to the furthest reaches of the galaxy?" Sarah's expression hardened, and for a moment, the aliens glimpsed something that made them step back instinctively. It was the look of a predator that had been cornered, wounded, but not yet broken. "Because," Sarah said quietly, "we've spent the last 3 months tracking them. We know where they're going next. And Chancellor, they're not heading for the outer rim anymore. They're coming here, to the heart of galactic civilization." "How long do we have?" Admiral Korath asked, already shifting into military mode. 6 weeks, Commander Rodriguez replied. "Maybe 7 if we're lucky. But Ambassador, there's something else you need to understand about the Devourers, something that makes them different from any enemy you've ever faced." He paused, ensuring he had their complete attention. "They learn. Every world they consume, every species they devour, they absorb not just the life energy, but the knowledge, the memories, the technologies. They've consumed 14 inhabited systems in the past year alone. They know everything those civilizations knew." Dr. Okafor stepped forward, her scientific mind overriding her grief. "But we discovered something during our pursuit. The Devourers have a weakness, a critical flaw in their feeding process. If we can exploit it—" "You can stop them?" Zethkri interrupted, hope creeping into his voice. Sarah's smile was grim and predatory. "We can hurt them, badly. But we'll need your help, and it won't be easy. The plan requires something the galaxy has never attempted before." "What?" Chancellor Vextar asked, though part of her dreaded the answer. "We need to turn your entire civilization into bait." Chapter 3. The Impossible Alliance. The war room aboard Nexus Prime buzzed with activity as holographic star charts filled the air like constellations of light. Representatives from 12 major species huddled around tactical displays, their diverse forms creating a bizarre tableau of galactic unity, born from desperation. Captain Sarah Chen stood at the center of it all, her human features stark against the kaleidoscope of alien faces. The past week had been a whirlwind of briefings, demonstrations, and increasingly desperate negotiations. "The Devourers follow a predictable pattern," she explained, manipulating the holographic display with practiced ease. "They send scout ships ahead to identify high-energy signatures, population centers, industrial complexes, anything that radiates significant life energy." Admiral Korath's scarred hide rippled with tension, So we hide. Shut down our cities. Evacuate our populations. That won't work, Commander Rodriguez interjected, pulling up tactical data. We tried that on Kepler Station. The Devourers have evolved beyond simple energy detection. They can sense the quantum resonance of organized consciousness itself. Dr. Felnari's insectoid features clicked in agitation. Quantum resonance? That's theoretically impossible to mask. Exactly, Dr. Okafor said, stepping forward with a grim smile. Which is why we're not going to hide. We're going to amplify the signal. The room erupted in confused chatter until Chancellor Vextar raised her crystalline hand for silence. Explain. Sarah activated a new holographic model, showing the inner structure of what appeared to be a massive crystalline entity. This is a devourer ship. What you're seeing isn't technology as we understand it. It's a living organism, grown rather than built. The entire vessel is essentially a massive digestive system. Disgusting, muttered Captain Thelvor of the Andorian Defense Fleet, his blue skin pale with revulsion. Effective, Sarah corrected, but also vulnerable. Dr. Okafor, show them the feeding mechanism. The hologram shifted, revealing intricate biological systems that pulsed with alien energy. The Devourers absorb life energy through quantum entanglement, Dr. Okafor explained. They create a resonance field that synchronizes with the target's biological frequencies, then drain the energy directly into their own systems. Like a parasite, Zethkri observed with obvious distaste. Exactly like a parasite, Sarah agreed. And like all parasites, they can be poisoned. Lieutenant Colonel Liu stepped forward, her engineer's mind clearly excited by the technical challenge. We've developed what we call a quantum toxin. It's not a physical substance, but a specific pattern of energy frequencies that disrupts the Devourer's absorption process. Admiral Korath leaned forward intently. How effective is this toxin? In simulation? Commander Rodriguez smiled grimly. It could cripple an entire Devourer fleet, but there's a catch. The toxin has to be delivered at the moment of feeding. We need the Devourers to actually begin their consumption process before we can strike. The implications hit the assembled delegates like a physical blow. Chancellor Vexitar's crystalline form dimmed noticeably. You're asking us to let them begin feeding on our worlds. On one world, Sarah corrected. A carefully chosen target. With maximum population density and life energy concentration, we turn it into the biggest, most irresistible meal in galactic history. And when they take the bait? Captain Thelvor asked, though his expression suggested he already knew the answer. Everyone on that world dies, Sarah said bluntly. But their sacrifice could save trillions of lives across the galaxy. The room fell into stunned silence. The moral weight of the proposal pressed down on every delegate like a crushing gravity field. Dr. Felnari was the first to speak. Her voice, barely above a whisper. Which world? Sarah's holographic display shifted to show a blue-green planet covered in sprawling cities and teeming with life. The assembled delegates recognized it immediately. Nexus Prime, Sarah said quietly. The capital of galactic civilization, home to over 50 billion souls from every major species. The Devourers won't be able to resist it. The explosion of outrage was immediate and deafening. Delegates shouted in dozens of languages while security personnel moved to prevent physical confrontations. But Admiral Korath's booming voice cut through the chaos. Silence! The room fell quiet, all eyes turning to the massive warrior. His scarred face was grim with the weight of command decisions. Captain, he said slowly, you're asking us to sacrifice our capital world, our families, our children, everything we've built over millennia. Yes, Sarah replied without flinching. I am. And you believe this will work? I believe it's our only chance, Sarah answered. The Devourers have consumed 14 civilizations. Each one made them stronger, smarter, more adaptable. In 6 weeks, they'll be here whether we're ready or not. This is our one opportunity to catch them overconfident and vulnerable. Chancellor Vextar stepped forward, her form flickering with internal light. Captain, you've lost your own world to these creatures. Your own people. Why should we trust the judgment of someone who has already failed once? The question hung in the air like a blade. Sarah's team tensed, ready to defend their captain, but she raised a hand to stop them. Because, Sarah said, her voice carrying the weight of survivor's guilt and unshakable determination, I know what it's like to watch everything you love die. I know the sound a sun makes when it goes out. I know the silence that follows the last scream of your species. She paused, her eyes meeting each delegate's gaze in turn. And I know that I'd rather die fighting than live knowing I could have saved you all but chose the easy path instead. Ambassador Zethkri cleared his throat nervously. Captain, even if we agreed to this insane plan, how would we evacuate 50 billion beings without alerting the Devourers? We don't evacuate them, Commander Rodriguez said quietly. We recruit them. The room erupted again, but this time Sarah's voice cut through the noise with military authority. Every citizen of Nexus Prime becomes a soldier in this war. We arm them with quantum resonators, devices that will amplify their life energy signatures and make them irresistible to the Devourers. But the moment the feeding begins, those same resonators become weapons. Lieutenant Colonel Liu activated a new holographic display showing a small crystalline device. Each resonator contains a concentrated dose of our quantum toxin. When the Devourers attempt to feed, they'll absorb the poison directly into their systems. It's a suicide mission, Dr. Felnari said, her clicking growing more agitated. You're asking 50 billion people to poison themselves to death. I'm asking 50 billion people to choose how they die, Sarah replied. Fighting back, or being consumed like cattle. The weight of the moment settled over the assembly. This wasn't just a military decision. It was a moral choice that would define the galaxy's future. Admiral Korath stood slowly, his massive frame casting shadows across the holographic displays. I've fought in 17 wars across 3 sectors. I've seen civilizations rise and fall, but I've never seen anything like this. He paused, studying the human captain with newfound respect. Captain Chen, your plan is insane, suicidal, morally questionable, and probably our only hope. He turned to address the assembly. I vote to accept the human proposal. One by one, the delegates began to voice their agreement, not with enthusiasm, but with the grim determination of beings who understood they were choosing between certain extinction and possible survival. Chancellor Vextar was the last to speak. Captain, if we do this, if we sacrifice our capital, world, and your plan fails, what then? Sarah's smile was razor-sharp and utterly human. Then we make sure the Devourers choke on us. Chapter 4. The Last Gambit. 3 weeks later, Nexus Prime had transformed into something unprecedented in galactic history, a world preparing for its own death. The great spires that had once reached toward the stars in celebration of interstellar unity now bristled with quantum resonators. Every citizen, from the youngest child to the eldest elder, wore the crystalline devices that would either save the galaxy or damn them all. Captain Sarah Chen stood on the observation deck of the orbital defense platform, watching the controlled chaos below. Commander Rodriguez joined her, his face etched with the stress of coordinating a military operation unlike anything in recorded history. Status report, Sarah said without taking her eyes off the planet. All civilians have been issued resonators, Rodriguez replied, consulting his tactical display. Military units are positioned at key points across the planet's surface. The quantum toxin delivery system is ready for activation. And the volunteers? Rodriguez's expression darkened. 57,400,000 and counting. All of them know this is a one-way mission. Sarah nodded grimly. The volunteers were the key to the operation, civilians and military personnel who had chosen to remain at their posts rather than attempt evacuation. Each one carried enough quantum toxin to poison a devourer feeding tendril, ensuring maximum damage to the enemy fleet. Captain, Dr. Okafor's voice crackled over the communication system. We're detecting massive hyperspace distortions at the edge of the system. They're coming. Sarah activated the ship-wide communication system, her voice carrying to every human vessel in the makeshift fleet surrounding Nexus Prime. All units, this is Captain Chen. The Devourers have arrived. Remember, we don't win this by defeating them in battle. We win by making them pay so dearly for every victory that they think twice before attacking another world. Through the observation window, she could see the first Devourer ships materializing from hyperspace. They were even larger than the intelligence, reports had suggested. Massive, organic-looking vessels that seemed to pulse with their own internal light. My God, Rodriguez whispered. There are hundreds of them. The Devourer fleet spread across the system like a plague. Their bioships, moving with predatory grace toward the inner planets. But as Sarah had predicted, they ignored the smaller worlds and mining stations drawn inexorably toward the massive life energy signature of Nexus Prime. All civilian vessels begin evacuation procedures. Admiral Korath's voice boomed across the communication channels. Military vessels prepare for defensive positions. But Sarah knew the truth that none of the alien commanders wanted to acknowledge. The evacuation ships were a decoy. Most of them carried only volunteers who would return to the planet's surface at the critical moment. The real evacuation, the one that mattered, had happened weeks ago, when the truly essential personnel had been quietly relocated to hidden colonies in distant systems. Captain, Lieutenant Colonel Liu reported from the engine room. All quantum resonators are online. We're broadcasting a life energy signature that should be visible halfway across the galaxy. Excellent, Sarah replied. Now we wait for them to take the bait. The Devourer ships approached Nexus Prime with the patience of apex predators. Their biohulls pulsed with increasing intensity as they detected the massive concentration of life energy on the planet's surface. Captain, Dr. Okafor called out, her voice tight with excitement and fear. The Devourers are beginning to deploy their feeding apparatus. Multiple organic tendrils are extending from the main ships. Through the tactical display, Sarah could see the alien feeding mechanism in action. Massive, root-like tendrils stretched down from each Devourer ship, seeking contact with the planet's surface. Where they touched down, the very ground began to wither and die as the creatures began their horrific feast. Energy drain is accelerating, Dr. Okafor reported. The Devourers are feeding faster than we've ever recorded. The quantum resonators are amplifying the life energy signatures exactly as predicted. Sarah gripped the railing of the observation deck, her knuckles white with tension. How long until the toxin can be activated? The Devourers need to fully commit to the feeding process, Dr. Okafor replied. Their entire digestive system has to be engaged. We're at 60% commitment. Now 70, 80. Captain, Rodriguez said urgently, we're receiving reports from the surface. The volunteers they're dying. The Devourers are actually consuming them. Sarah closed her eyes briefly, feeling the weight of every life being sacrificed for this desperate gambit. How many? 17 million and counting. The number hit Sarah like a physical blow, but she forced herself to remain focused. Dr. Okafor, status on the feeding mechanism? 95%, 98, 100%. Captain, the Devourers are fully committed to the feeding process. All tendrils are engaged. All digestive systems are active. We have maximum penetration. This was the moment. The culmination of weeks of planning, sacrifice, and desperate hope. Execute the toxin, Sarah commanded. Across Nexus Prime, 50 million quantum resonators activated simultaneously. The crystalline devices that had been amplifying life energy, signatures suddenly reversed their function, flooding the Devourer feeding tendrils with concentrated quantum toxin. The effect was immediate and catastrophic. The massive bioships writhed in space as their organic systems began to shut down. The feeding tendrils, moments before draining life energy with ruthless efficiency, now convulsed as poison flooded their networks. It's working, Dr. Okafor shouted over the chaos of alarms and status reports. The Devourers are experiencing massive system failures. Their feeding apparatus is collapsing. But even as the enemy fleet began to die, the cost of victory became apparent. Nexus Prime, stripped of much of its life energy and poisoned by the quantum toxin, was dying too. The great cities went dark one by one as the planet's biosphere collapsed. Captain, Rodriguez reported, his voice heavy with grief. Final casualty reports from the surface, 43,600,000 confirmed dead. The volunteers, they stayed at their posts until the end. Sarah stared at the dying planet below, her heart breaking for the brave souls who had sacrificed everything for a chance at galactic survival. But there was no time for mourning. Not yet. Status of the Devourer fleet? She asked. 87% casualties, Rodriguez replied, consulting his displays. The remaining ships are in full retreat. Captain, it worked. The quantum toxin worked. But even as the human crew celebrated their victory, new contacts appeared on the long-range sensors. More Devourer ships, arriving from the outer systems, they had already consumed. Captain, Dr. Okafor said quietly, it's not over. The main Devourer force is still out there. What we fought here was just the advance fleet. Sarah nodded grimly. She had expected this. The Devourers were too intelligent to commit their entire force to a single battle. But the victory at Nexus, Prime had proven that they could be defeated. Send a message to all Galactic Council worlds, Sarah commanded. Tell them what happened here. Tell them the Devourers can be beaten, but only if we're willing to pay the price. As the last Devourer ships vanished into hyperspace, Sarah stood in silence, watching the funeral pyre that had once been the galaxy's greatest city. 50 billion beings had lived on Nexus Prime just months ago. Now, fewer than 7 million survivors huddled in emergency shelters, all that remained of a world that had sacrificed itself to save the galaxy. What now, Captain? Rodriguez asked quietly. Sarah turned from the observation window, her face set with determination. Now we hunt them down, every last one of them. We've proven they can be killed. Time to prove they can be exterminated. Epilogue. The new dawn 1 year later, Captain Sarah Chen stood on the bridge of humanity's newest warship, the Retribution. Through the vast viewport, she could see the construction scaffolds surrounding the rebuilt space station that had replaced Nexus Prime as the galactic capital. The galaxy had changed in the 12 months since the Battle of Nexus Prime. The Devourer War, as historians were already calling it, had forged an alliance between species that had never trusted each other before. Human military tactics had been combined with alien technology to create a fleet unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Captain, Commander Rodriguez reported, his hair now completely gray from the stress of constant warfare. All ships are reporting ready. The final Devourer nest has been located. Sarah nodded, studying the tactical display that showed the enemy's last stronghold, a massive bioconstruct built in the ruins of what had once been a thriving star system. Intelligence reports suggested that fewer than a dozen Devourer ships remained, but she had learned not to underestimate the creature's cunning. Any word from the Memorial Fleet? She asked. They're in position, Rodriguez confirmed. Admiral, Korath sends his regards and reminds you that the survivors of Nexus Prime want to be the ones to fire the final shot. Sarah smiled at that. The alien warrior had become an unlikely friend over the past year, bonding with the humans over their shared understanding of sacrifice and loss. His own homeworld had been the next target after Nexus Prime, and only the early warning provided by the human fleet had saved it from destruction. Dr. Okafor, Sarah called to her science officer. Status on the quantum toxin deployment? All systems green, Captain, the xenobiologist replied. We've learned a lot about Devourer biology over the past year. This final strike should eliminate not just their ships, but their ability to reproduce. Sarah took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the moment. Humanity had lost its homeworld to these creatures, but in the process, they had found something unexpected, a place in the galactic community that went beyond mere survival. All ships, this is Captain Chen, she announced over the fleet-wide communication system. Today we end the threat that has consumed 14 civilizations and billions of lives. We fight not just for revenge, but for the right of every species to exist free from fear. She paused, thinking of the volunteers who had died on Nexus Prime, of the humans who had perished when Earth's sun went dark, of all the countless beings who had been sacrificed to bring them to this moment. For Earth, for Nexus Prime, for every World that will never be the same. All ships attack formation, let's finish this. The combined fleet, human, galactic council, and allied forces, swept toward the Devourer nest with unified purpose. As the final battle began, Sarah allowed herself a moment of hope. The galaxy had faced its darkest hour and survived. Humanity had lost its home but found its destiny. And somewhere in the vast cosmos, new worlds were being born. New civilizations were taking their first steps toward the stars, knowing that someone would be watching over them. The Devourers had taught the galaxy a harsh lesson about the price of survival, but they had also taught them something equally important, that even the darkest night could be followed by dawn, if you were willing to fight for it. As the last Devourer ship exploded in a burst of alien fire, Sarah whispered a quiet prayer for all the souls that had been lost along the way. Then she turned to her crew and began planning for the future, a future where humanity and its allies would stand guard against whatever threats the universe might hold. The galaxy had faced doom when Earth's battleship arrived. But it had found salvation in the stubborn, unbreakable will of a species that refused to go quietly into the dark. And in the end, that had made all the difference.